So it's 4:30 and let's start our invited talk. Let's welcome Ron Jimerson, who will talk about how to prepare for unpredictable. We are happy to have you here and let's get started.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Morgan and I go way, way back. She was very instrumental in how my career progressed within the cybersecurity profession. So if she hasn't already shared the story with you, she was really pivotal in connecting me once I went through my cybersecurity program, master's program with the University of Washington, and connecting me with some people that helped me latch on to my first CISO position within the city of Tacoma. And from there, I went to the Port of Seattle, where I reside right now. So I wanted to make sure that it was clearly understood that Morgan has powers beyond most of our imaginations when it comes to how we want to progress in this particular profession. So anyway, now that I've put in a plug for Morgan, I think you know a little bit about me already with the Port of Seattle. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer. I've been there for approximately 5 years. And like most of you, I think, Morgan, most of the folks here on this call are students. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And do we have people here that are on this call that are actually working in the profession or doing some type of IT work right now? Is that correct to assume as well? Just kind of wondering. Okay. Okay. I couldn't hear your response,
yes,
but that's
yes,
okay.
They have a background.
Okay. So, in this profession and going through the learning process, you hear a lot about the basic cybersecurity principles, operating with around a risk framework, layered security, and various security tools and methodologies and things like that for approaching cyber attacks and things like that. So I assume that most of you have those kind of principles already in mind. So I'm not here to kind of reinforce a lot of that, but maybe in some ways, but not a lot of that. I wanted to try to give you more of a unique perspective for understanding and approaching security incidents and things like that. We can get all the education in the world in the classroom, but that practical experience is really what, brings everything home as to really maturing in this particular profession. So just wanted to level set that. So what I did, I put together, is it okay if I share a slide presentation? Am I able to share? I guess I can't. It doesn't say I can.
You should be able to.
Well, I don't
not,
see.
I'm sure Asha can read.
I don't.
You have to be part of the group, and I don't. Oh, hold on. I will figure out how to do it.
Okay. If not, I'll have to.
If not, you'll have to email it to Asha, then she can share it. But I'm pretty sure she has the capacity to provide you with sharing.
Yeah. I
make a presenter.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that looks like that may work.
Okay. Nice.
Let's see if that's going to allow me to do what I want to do. And you should be able to see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. So I explained who I was and, wanted to talk a little bit about preparing for the unexpected, because in this role, in this job, that's really what you're going to be doing quite a bit if you haven't experienced that already. Now, okay. Now I can try to move my slides around here a little bit. I apologize again. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Port of Seattle for those that may not be familiar with what we do. And that adds into the perspective of understanding my role in cybersecurity. What we do is really try to be an economic engine for the region here in Western Washington. So we have oversight of the international airport, which is the 11th busiest airport in the country. We are built for about 35 million passengers a year, but we actually uh, process over 50 million passengers a year. So if you're around SeaTac, you'll see lots of construction taking place to try to accommodate that growth that we've been experiencing. And then we also help facilitate the cruise industry here within Western Washington. We have a large container and bulk operation, which is the seventh largest cargo gateway in North America. And you can see that there. Then there's fishing, boating, and we have a large conglomerate of some real estate that we manage as well. So with all of that, the economic impact, you can see there's about 4.4 billion in the capital projects we have plans for. That includes the expansions and things like that. And then we have all kinds of port activities taking place in area jobs. We have about over 120,000 jobs that are associated with our port operations. And you can see the stats there on the airport business revenue costs and the cruise lines as well as the maritime trade. So these lines of business, as you might imagine, require a great deal of infrastructure and digital technology. And part of that digital technology is cybersecurity oversight. So it really kind of makes my role pretty vital along with my team and what we do at the Port of Seattle. One of these days, I'm going to figure out how to do this rotation here on these slides here. They're just not giving me what I want. Okay, so I wanted to also give you a little bit about a strategy that we've developed at the Port of Seattle, and it's probably in line with most of what your organizations are doing as well. But just to, really our purpose is trying to protect our information systems and minimize any exposure for data and things like that. And then we want to make sure that, we're investing and putting people in positions to make decisions and also lowering the risk to meet our social responsibilities and our economic growth, what our mission is at the port. So that's how I kind of tied all that together. Just some quick goals here. We want to make sure that we're putting, high quality cyber solutions in place, and we want to continuously to work on our cybersecurity program, which I'm sure you folks do. If you're not in the industry, this is what you'll always be trying to do. You just don't settle for one steady state. And you want to make sure that you're working on secure, reliable access. Most of us have that realization and understanding how to do that. And under strategic objectives, you'll see we've got the pillars under the NIST. The strategy for managing cybersecurity: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. So these are components that should be in everybody's incident response strategy within their programs. And then from a PMO perspective, you can see risk management, secure configurations, and you can just read the rest of them there. They include user awareness, as part of some of your major functions. And then I've listed on the bottom just some key things that we perform in our organization as part of our overall cybersecurity program. So given the time that I have here, I knew I couldn't go into it to death, but I wanted to give you a kind of an overall big picture of how our strategy is set and how that's composed. So should I pause here and ask if there's any questions about the Port of Seattle strategy-wise or anything like that, or do you just want me to keep going? I'll ask that to Asia if you want to.
Keep going.
Okay. So with all this being said and giving you the background, I really wanted to, kind of lay the groundwork for an understanding of, to be prepared for the unexpected within your organization. Once again, having some problems trying to move my slides forward. I thought this picture kind of represented a pretty decent perspective of, trying to prepare for the unexpected. This is the picture, for those that don't know, this is the Titanic. It represents of a Titanic sinking, and the whole rigmarole around that was, not having this understanding that this was a possibility that this advanced technology wouldn't sink. In fact, there's a couple of authors that he actually wrote about a ship like this sinking. One of the authors that did that was actually on the Titanic. So being able to, and this relates to cybersecurity, being able to kind of imagine something happening versus actually experiencing and seeing it happen are two different things. And I think that's what we could get caught up into when it comes to cybersecurity. I think a lot of organizations, they do a lot of different types of things and building their infrastructure up, but not really understanding and thinking about, hey, this we could have a catastrophe that takes place, and what are we doing to avoid that? So that's part of the perspective I wanted to provide as well. So that leads me to the unpredictable. Um, if anybody out there can tell me, when they think their organization is going to have the next cyber attack, please do so. Please chime in and do so. And I wanted to make it a point to kind of drive home that, this seems like a very odd question to ask, and a question that, you wouldn't be able to foresee. But there's actually things that are out there that actually might be able to help you determine when you're going to have your next cyber attack. There's predictive models that are out there, and the research is gaining a lot more traction for giving organizations the ability to be able to give them some level of, hey, we might have a cyber attack here soon because of this circumstance and that circumstance. I don't know if you guys are like, when I went through my program learning how to put Monte Carlo simulations together based on different types of variables and simulations that would give you some kind of a predictive analysis of your chances of maybe having a cyber attack or something like that. But some of the things that you can do is watch out what's going on with third-party providers. Industry is really becoming third-party management when it comes to technologies. A lot of organizations are outsourcing. We're doing a lot of that, either outsourcing, even when they're going to the cloud, they're outsourcing more and more with SaaS applications. And therefore, threat actors are really trying to look at those types of organizations, to get access to those organizations and you know, um, do their damage there. So that's why you'll see in the blue here, risk management is a fundamental principle to exercise, and I know you've gotten a lot of training around that there as well. And then, ask yourself, or can your organization survive a cyber attack? How do you know it can? Is that because you think you've got a great incident response plan? Is that because you think you've got great technology in place to be able to do that? So that's the question I would ask of you. If somebody were to ask you that question, how would you ask that? And how would you really know? You could take a look and you could think about your cybersecurity strategy. If you've got all the right pieces in place with a technology roadmap and outline stakeholders and various technology systems and things like that designed around your organization, you might feel comfortable, but you really don't know if you can survive a cyber attack until you really have one, to be practical with you. So I just wanted to make these points because, I think too often as practitioners in cybersecurity, you just don't want to get comfortable in the role that you're trying to serve, because there's always something you're probably missing, or something out of sync, or something that you don't know about that may come back to bite you later on. So don't make yourself too complacent and too comfortable. I want to talk about threat actors that are out there. What type of threat actor do you think would be attacking your organization or the organization you're in? I made it a point to put down here cyber criminals, because everybody out there with, that are performing cyber attacks, the majority of threat actors out there right now are really trying to, get some type of financial gain what they're doing, especially with ransomware and things like that. And some of these cyber criminals, actually, a lot of them are actually backed through forward actors as well. So that is kind of what I believe what most likely probably happened, and your organization today you probably would get attacked most likely from a cyber criminal. Um, so you really have to rely on your threat intelligence and your partners that you have out there sharing information with you, and make sure that you've got multiple sources of threat intelligence out there that you're able to analyze. And organizations are starting to kind of wake up a little bit more now and invest in threat hunting. So they go out there and they look for threat actors, their techniques and their tactics, and they're able to kind of build a solution around what they see these actors doing to better protect their organization. So it's a little bit more tailored to the organization once they understand how to conduct this type of practice taking place. And then say you do get an attack, how long do you think it's going to take to recover? In my years of experience, I don't see a lot of those discussions. We do what we call business impacts analysis to understand how quickly we can bring up a system and how we can get a business process back in service. Most organizations have, especially through their cybersecurity folks, have some kind of understanding how long would it take to stand things back up. But there's a lot really to be considered here, because are we just talking about your key business functions and process and back up, or are we talking about an overall, you know, to bring back up? So these are just some things you need to think about. I was going to get to talking about the experience that I've just recently went through, and it's still am experiencing with my organization. And even though we've got a lot of work, a lot of energy behind bringing back systems up, which we were able to do, we had a lot of stakeholders and a lot of other uh, business leaders in our organization that really were hammering about recovery times and when things were coming back up and how are they prioritized. That led us into really thinking about how is our continuity of operations plans, how are they structured across our organization, our disaster recovery. We put a lot of these things in place, but until you actually use them in a real life scenario, then you really know how good they work. With our organization, we had to go back through a lot of manual processes without having the technology in place because of the incident that we experienced with the Port of Seattle. And I'm going to kind of dive down into that a little bit. Morgan, I'm going to pause here before I get to my next slide to see if there's any questions out there, or do I just keep moving on?
Okay, so people can be fairly quiet online, but I'm going to ask you to start engaging in a conversation, because Ron and I came from an environment, we came from an environment where we were in the classroom. I know that sounds foreign to some of us today, and the interchange that you can have is really important. So please ask some questions. I am not going to do that tonight. I'm leaving it to everybody online.
Yeah, thank you for that plug, Morgan. I appreciate that. I can guarantee when you get yourself in a little bit of a situation that you've never experienced before, you might be thinking about this moment though. So I'll press on, and if anybody raises their hand up, somebody will, maybe Asia, somebody will facilitate stopping me. How about we do that? Okay. So I'm going to talk about
sorry.
all particular.
Sorry, Ron. We have a question from Dr. Patrick. Over.
On the previous slide, let me break the ice. So I was wondering if there, from your experience and knowledge, the type of prescriptive um, analytics that the companies are using today to kind of predict when the next attack will happen, the type of attack that could happen, and the type of individuals or employees how to inside a threat, or is it just the normal criteria, financial, marital, and so on and so forth? If you can talk a little bit about that, that would be fine. Thank you.
So I think you're asking me of what type of prescriptive analytics that we're looking at to determine what attack vectors are being sought after? Is that kind of what you're asking here? Help
Yes,
me.
yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, when we look at attack vectors and what the attackers are, I mean, it's easy to attack an organization these days because, in all my years of experience, we still haven't really been able to manage phishing attacks. Phishing attacks have only grown, and people are more susceptible to phishing attacks these days. And now with AI and advanced technologies, that's become a lot more sophisticated as well. As far as what threat actors are looking for, I'm sure everybody here is trained on the reconnaissance piece when they get into a network trying to learn and then maneuver through a network. And then, usually you see some type of blended attacks where someone has compromised a machine, but they use that machine to get to another machine to really establish their full objective. So you see attacks coming from a variety of different ways, and most threat actors are organized in such a way that they're going to be very methodical about infiltrating your organization, and just like in the classroom, they've got goals and objectives that they want to achieve, and they're seeking. So they're very, very patient, and even though things may seem quiet on your network, your infrastructure, it can be a concerning time as well, because they like in our organization can slip through the radar in such a way that you won't notice anything happening, and you won't see all the signs until actually you're kind of in a little bit of a panic or a rush to get things done. So that's that's my answer to what I think you asked, and let me just kind of move on, and then we can address some of these other issues associated with your question as well. Is that okay, Doctor?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. I see somebody else had a question.
So I just want to elaborate a little bit more about that. Oftentimes within an organization, the weakest link will be the people who are not like too well versed with the technology. So how do you educate them to be better aware of cybersecurity?
So most organizations, it's more like box checking. They go out and then they buy some training material, and then they make their employees, take these training modules, and presume that their employees are educated enough to deal with security issues as they arise. One of the things that we do is we have I think I can tell you what it is. It's a Nobi 4 software we use that provides the training modules for people. But that also comes with um, the some other additional software we use to run phishing exercises and campaigns. So we do that frequently, and it lets us know it kind of narrows down where in our organizations do we have folks that are more stronger or weaker and being fooled or lured in from a phishing attack. So we keep some analytics behind that. We haven't utilized the software to the point where we can actually get more analysis of each individual, but the software also does provide us with actually a score of everybody in our organization as what their risk level is in the organization based on their behavior. And we're trying to exploit more of that. But we also do TED Talks and things like that. Cybersecurity awareness training is a culture issue, and it's like a steady campaign that you got to keep going, and keep putting things out there, keep putting information out there instead of doing a yearly, hey, here's your training. It's a constant communication. There are certain events that take place, like this time of the year, the holidays coming up. We will put special messages out there, let people know that, hey, be aware of these types of phishing campaigns or attacks or manipulation or things like that coming down the pike because of where we are, holidays, election season, things like that.
Thank you.
So real quick, I'm going to move on to our particular incident, because I think it's got some good information in there to kind of gravitate towards so you can you can better deal with such similar situations if you were to experience that. And I just took this out of GeekWire. I don't want to make sure that I kind of want to make sure that I wasn't the one just giving you all of our business. I want to make sure that this is really through a third party, but it's accurate. And we didn't we on back in August, as you may know, we experienced a cyber attack by a ransomware group known as Rashida, and they're out of Eastern Europe on the Russian area. They are a fairly new threat actor. I think they've only been around a couple of years. They've targeted mostly, hospitals, some critical infrastructure, things like that. And they were the ones that infiltrated our system. And once they got into our system and they wreaked havoc, as you can see here, they were able to gain access to certain computer systems. They were able to encrypt data, exfiltrate data for ransom. So this is kind of a typical thing that you would see in a ransomware attack. I would love to get into more details, but one of the things, when you're still being investigated and they're looking into it, the lawyers are very, very, very stern about making sure that what we're communicating and not putting too many things out there because some of the legal implications. But this is the gist of what happened to us in our organizations, and it really interrupted a lot of our business functions, everything from our financial services to how we do operations, like at our airports, our marinas, our phone services were impacted, our website was impacted. We had all these things that we had to deal with. We had an incident response plan that we did utilize pieces of that, but what's important to know with an incident response plan, you just don't go, okay, well, hey, we've got an incident. Let's turn to our incident response plan and see what we should do. A lot of these things are, just should be reactionary based on what your incident response plan says. And that's what we found. That's what we experienced in our organization. So, we just had a cybersecurity tabletop exercise with our leadership, and we make it a point to have an exercise with them at least on a yearly basis. We have some other exercises that we plan on doing with some tiers of the organization, but it's to emphasize that when we do have a major cyber incident, that those leaders are the decision makers. So if we've got to interrupt business services and we bring services back and things like that, they are the ones that really have to be involved in that decision process. And the other thing is, from my years of experience, is sometimes when I've been involved in cyber events, some leaders and even lawyers, they come in and they want to take over the whole show, and sometimes they may not understand clearly what your experience is and what you offer to that. So that's why it's important to at least have a tabletop exercise and constant communication with your leadership, so you understand what each other's roles are and you don't get bogged down in more confusion and waste time. So with all of that said, I want to just kind of get to some lessons learned and make so that there's enough time for questions and things like that. So I wanted to approach this from 3 categories here, and that was our response efforts, our recovery efforts, and after actions. I talked a little bit about response planning and a tested playbook. It's, I think from all your learnings, you're gonna know to do that at least on a yearly basis or so. But not everything in that response planning or in that playbook is going to be by the playbook. There's going to be lots of deviations to that based on the particular scenario that you'll be experiencing. So I wouldn't be in a position of wanting to say that well, it says it in the playbook, we have to do X, Y, or Z. Well, the situation may not necessarily warrant that, though. So it's one of those things where you may not want to do everything that's written in black and white when it comes to some common sense and realistic issues that you're dealing with in your organization. And I wanted to make it a point to put in here that our cyber incident response team, because it really starts with them. They're the ones. We have a I have a cybersecurity manager works for me, and she, along with our folks in IT and some other key individuals, just a handful of folks, when something does happen, they get together, they do the analysis, and then they were able to actually declare, hey, this is a valid incident that's taking place, and we need to execute our incident response plan. And I'm making it a point to bring this up because sometimes organizations think they have an incident and they go through a lot of hoops and jumping just to find out that only it's not really an incident or it's something that's minor in nature. So you got to be very careful about trying to, initiate an incident in your organization if you don't have, all your I's dotted, your T's crossed, things like that, because you don't want to start. I don't want to use the word panic, but you don't want to start getting people kind of riled up if it's nothing to be riled up about. But once you do validate that, and once you do execute your incident response plan, um, they don't. This isn't written in our incident response plan, but highlighted in yellow here is you should be thinking about managing chaos because that's what you're about to go into. You're going to be managing a lot of chaos, and what I mean by that is people are going to be coming from you in a lot of different directions. Of hey, what's going on? Why isn't this back up? Why aren't you doing this? Things like that. So a lot of that is avoided when you have your tabletop exercises. But an organization of our size, there's a lot of stakeholders and pieces downstream that maybe we didn't think through all the way that, are kind of pinging us through that process. Even some of our regulators, we're still running around trying to, make sure we've got, we're taking control of some things. And we've got people like the FBI or CISA, other outside organizations saying, hey, report to us and let us know what's going on. Well, you're saying to yourself, just get the hell out of my way right now. I'm trying to manage an issue here. So, and in that response effort for us, we had reached a point where, the threat actors, we were seeing encryption and things like that, where we got to the point where we actually had to take our systems off the internet, and that's a big deal because you're going to stop a lot of different vital key operations in your organization, especially with an airline. They've got their own networks. They're okay in that capacity, but it did create some problems. This with some with some airlines down to the ticketing process. Other than that, everything was okay. But just taking systems offline, you have to think about who makes that decision. Is that something that's built in your incident response plan? Do you have the authority to be able to do that? So we did that, and because it was just a critical component where decisions had to be made and necessarily couldn't filter up at the top leadership at the time. So make sure that you got that type of authority to do that, and your leaders know that. Then there's the command and control. So I talked about managing chaos, the command and control piece. So we've got a command and control function or incident an ECC that we stand up when we have certain types of disasters and things like that outside of cyber as well. So we stood that up. We have what we call a policy room, and then it's structured in such a way where the executive director of our organization is fed information. He is able to brief our commission folks, the other leaders in the organizations, and he's able to kind of help, with the decision-making process of how we are to respond to this particular incident, and understanding that there's, technical teams doing some things, but he needs to have, or somebody needs to have that centralized visibility of what the hell is going on in the organization, and that they need to, if they need to make a critical decision on something. So you've got that vehicle to go through. And what we found in our experience, legal has become more and more prevalent in this process than we probably ever thought. They were able. It seemed like sometimes get in the way, but they really were a protective piece in all of this and helping us safeguard our exposure that we may have in the organization, meaning that who could come after us, or what kind of legal action would be taking place based on the ability of not being able to provide some critical services to our citizens within the region. But once you're going through this process, you've got your command and control stood up. You've got to be able to communicate with people. Okay, you take your systems offline. You got to make sure that your employees, your stakeholders, and everybody else knows what's going on and why what's going on. And then you have, if you can, understand to communicate, to give them how you're prioritizing some things and how you're sharing information. One of the things we experienced was right off the bat, I've got sister organizations calling me up. Hey, what's going on? Can we help you? What you going through? Things like that. So you don't have time to talk to people and they're going through, a lot of stories and things like that. But you may come back to need people. So you got to be careful about how you manage all of that. And then there's the media. Things seem to travel these days very quickly. We're lucky that we do have media people within our organization that are able to communicate to the public as to what's going on. But that's a process within itself, because that filters back up to that command and control function and through our executive director. Hey, this is what we're going to communicate. No, don't communicate it this way. Be careful about communicating it that way, those types of things. And really in the response process, it's really the downstream impacts. I think what you'll find is we have a lot of technical people want to do a lot of technical things, and in a situation like this, they kind of get into some of their silos. Well, I only take care of endpoint protection. No, I'm a network engineer. This is my piece here, and people not kind of really realizing the overarching impact of what's happening across the organization, meaning that you've got big lines of business functions that need to be taken care of. So you got to make sure you're communicating with the right people so they communicate with their leaders. And I think one of the big things that, in every organization is to really know your team and what their capabilities are. In cybersecurity, we usually have small teams. There's only about 10 of us, but they've got to be a jack of all trades. And that's just where we kind of have to be really careful. You got people that are trying to manage, endpoint protection. You got somebody else trying to manage firewall rules. You got somebody else that's managing emergency response, and you got a commingled group of people that are trying to do all the above. So, and some people are good at doing that, but you may not have an expert in every category in your organization to fulfill these particular needs. So I just wanted to make sure that you really kind of understand and don't assume because somebody's in a certain position or a role that they're very proficient at their job, because that may not necessarily be the case. So before I move on to recovery, I'll pause real quick to see if there's any questions. If not, I'll just keep moving on. I'll talk all day if you let me. Okay, so I'll get into the recovery process. For us, before you really can get into a good recovery process, you really have to figure out what the hell has even happened to your organization. And that's an impact analysis there. Understanding, hey, this is a containment process too. Do you have things contained? Is the threat actor still, in your infrastructure? If they are, you presume that they are, understand how they navigate it, what systems they have. So you may have to go through a certain rebuilding process. You may have to abandon pieces of your infrastructure and put new infrastructure in place. So that's that forensics process. And if you're like our organization that doesn't have a full-time forensics person, you'll have to outsource that. And we did that. We did that with Microsoft. So they took us through a very methodical path of understanding how the threat actor navigated through our organization, what systems were accessed, and what data was looked at or exfiltrated out of our organization. And the forensics piece associated with this was also part of our blueprint for recovering as well. So that's another way to look at forensics. But a lot of organizations don't have that expertise. We didn't have probably all of that expertise that we needed, which is a good thing of going outside to be able to do that. It was definitely worth the investment. And I'll pause right here. because I didn't put it in here, but this is where some of our cyber insurance came into play. So they were able to pick some of the cost up for outside provider being able to come in and help us. So that's something else you might want to think about as well. And as you're thinking about your restoration and understanding what systems that you're going to bring back up, it's not necessarily your decision to make. It's your decision to present maybe to a higher authority and explain why you're doing that. Because people are going to, like I said before, under the response part, are going to be pounding on you, and you still may be in some sense of chaos. And that leads me to why I put down coordinate recovery. There are, in our organizations, we had multiple networks, and you might be faced with something like that too. And understanding not just how the threat actor, infiltrated any one of those networks, you need to understand, how you might want to recover or are going to recover. Your incident response plan is only going to take you so far. But if you've got an IT team over here trying to stand up new firewall rules and configurations, and then you have somebody else on another network that maybe some lines of business cross another network, and they're doing some restoration pieces, and those two conflict. We had a little bit of that, which caused some confusion at times. So you need a really good centralized, coordinated recovery effort. And then there's transparency. What we did was we stood up some SharePoint sites that actually list a lot of our software, our systems and things like that, and our key systems, where we were at in that recovery, it also listed as well. And then we had another component of that that were high priority systems that were vetted through our leadership that we were able to, make more of a highlight as to where we were with those systems. So people didn't have to keep, bugging us and pinging us and where we at on our ERP system or this financial system or something like that. They could go to one source and they could see what was happening there. And then, don't expect to be the same again. Just don't think that you're going to build back up or you're going to repair or recover something. They say never let a good crisis go to waste, and we certainly are. So we had a lot of IT projects on our roadmap that we were planning or in the process of implementing. And based on our situation, rather than try to bring certain systems back up, we just proceeded with the technology plans that we had for some of the upgrades and advances in our system, such as VPN, and then some other security type of changes, more threat monitoring and things like that. So we were able to put some of that in place. And then there's those downstream impacts again, and the continuity of operations plan. We do know that when you lose you people get too comfortable in that technology, and when you lose that technology, even some of the best plans in place are not workable, or maybe you discover at that time that you didn't think things through quite, because we're so digitized, and when you lose that capability, people might tell you, yeah, I've got a plan, or I've got this document and that type of thing, and oh no, I don't have, my computer is not available to connect to the network, so therefore I don't have access with that. So you'll find yourself doing a lot of manual things or having to be very creative about doing some things. So look for that. And then there's emergency spending. We got great support behind our recovery efforts. So we had a emergency declaration that allowed us to cover the costs of some of the things that we were trying to bring back online, some of the new infrastructure pieces. And then again, our cybersecurity insurance was able to be a part of that as well. So that's worked out for us. And then you're continuously reporting, and I don't mean just within your organizations. Yeah, you do want to let your employees know. We had daily messages go out to employees, and we've got a system in place. It's designed for disasters, but it actually sends messages out to your personal email, the work email, your work phone, things like that. So we have multiple methods of communicating information to people. So We spent a lot of time making sure that people knew what was happening. But the reporting piece, if you like our organization, if you've got PCI, if you've got criminal justice information, first responder type of obligation stuff, you got to make sure that you're reporting to them. Or if you're not, they're going to come to you and they're going to want your information about what's going on. Some of the things we've had to do was write kind of letters explaining or information explaining, hey, what we went through, and that we had a clean infrastructure that you could affiliate with if you need to send messaging and things like that, because people aren't going to trust you, until they understand not only what you went through but what you did to recover. So these are some things that you have to communicate. And those are part of the pressures. And you got a lot of people in the organization that will jump in and bend over backwards to get things going again, do some work around some things. We saw a lot of that, which ultimately, created fatigue with people. So at some point, you got to understand that people have worked long hours, little sleep, things like that. So you want to be cognizant of that too. And in a leadership position, you want to make sure that people are getting some of the rest they need, because they're not going to stop, sometimes until you actually have to tell people, hey, you need to, take some time off, or, go home, those types of things. So that's something that you want to be conscientious of. And then as I look over here to some of the after action stuff, yeah, we've got reporting requirements just like most organizations do. CISA, I'm sure you're familiar with who they are, the FBI, and then state requirements. We have a state cybersecurity CISO person, CIO. They've reached out to us. They wanted to make sure they understood what was going on, because they wanted to make sure they briefed the governor, who wanted to know what our situation was. And speaking of reporting, because this incident, got some national attention, our airport director, and we had to provide him with a lot of information. He was actually summoned to Congress, and he had to do some congressional testimony. So we were able to kind of help him and arm him with the information that he needed to. And it wasn't there just to explain what happened to the Port of Seattle, but at the federal level, they were looking for input on what they need to do as a body of government to help organizations like ours, get through the type of incident that we went through. So those types of things can happen as a result of what happened to us. After actions, I'm sure you're familiar with all of that. It's not just capturing the technology pieces that we usually do when we have tabletops. It's a lot about capturing those operational pieces, and what you need to do better, and what could be better. Interesting, in our organization, some of the top leaders, they made it a point to not have us do that in-house. They wanted to make sure that this particular process was done through a third-party provider. So when the process of bringing somebody on, they're going to capture all of our information. They're going to make some recommendations, but we decided to go through a professional services to do that because of the wide impact this had on our organizations. We want to make sure we get this right. And speaking of after action report, you'll see that I put, more than one report. There'll be an internal report for us, and then other reports that we can give to the public and other stakeholders, outlining what's happened and what we're doing. And one of the things that we have to make sure we do is a root cause analysis. We can say that there was a particular vulnerability in our organization that was exploited, or somebody clicked on a wrong link or something like that. We can say all of that triggered all this, but really, does that really let us know what the root cause of what happened? I mean, do we have some big gaps in some of our security practices? Is there an underlying issue? And I think the question was brought up earlier about maybe training in our organization, those types of things. So that's one of the things that we're going to be trying to to capture and really kind of home in on. And we want to make sure that we're continually updating people. So this is our employees they're still interested in what has happened. And we've got to keep communicating that, hey, if we learn new information, we need to make sure that we're sharing that. Along those lines, training awareness, what kind of modifications that we need to make in our training. Maybe there's something we overlook that we could do better. And then we have to take a look at our strategy too. We've built our strategy through a layered defense system. We've got a certain amount of personnel. We've got partnerships with other organizations. We have a roadmap on new technologies, all these types of things. But maybe there's some areas there where we need to change. And then lastly here, I put in here leadership support. We had leadership support from the very beginning of our incident. We want to make sure that we hold on to that support. Cybersecurity, it's not an IT issue. It's everybody's issue. So we're making it a point to kind of make that known throughout the organization, that not just information security is responsible, but everybody is. So, and that continues to grow partnerships outside of the organization as well with some of the affiliations that we have at the state and local government. I talked about that a little bit. And I wanted to put down, something to think about is, how's the security culture going to change, and how is that going to evolve? And I think for us, it's not just making people more conscientious of cybersecurity, but people will engage in conversations. People will engage in discussions. People will probably want to know where their data is and how it's being managed, because if they lost it during this particular incident, they're gonna really want to make sure that it's protected in such a way that we won't have a reoccurrence of what just took place. So that's kind of my attack lessons learned for right now. I'm sure there's other things that I probably could have put in here, but I'm going to pause again here to allow any questions or comments that anybody would like to make.
Ron, there's a lot to unpack here.
Well, sure.
And the thing and I'm glad that you were willing to talk to folks about this, because I think even going back 10 years ago, it wasn't a matter of, are we going to be attacked? It's like, when? And it's not, we can't keep them out. It's how quickly we recover. What's been the most valuable takeaway that you've had from this entire episode?
The valuable takeaway? Well, there are lots, but I think the most valuable takeaway that I've had is that our organization, when we had the pandemic, a lot of us went to remote work, and we're doing things like we're doing in Teams right now. But when this happened, a lot of people came back into the office, and it was like something you'd see 5 or 6 years ago. There were a lot of people moving, and there weren't people arguing, there weren't people stressed out, there weren't people complaining. There were just people trying to work and get something done. And I think that's kind of the biggest outcome, when people understood that they were part of a bigger cause than themselves. It really brought home the unity, really kind of united people. Hey, I haven't seen this person in a year or so, but now we're having a conversation. They brought in food for people to because they knew people working long hours. Some people had some sleeping bags in their office, all this other kind of stuff. Well, people were willing, ready, and able to go to war and fight back and reclaim what was theirs and what they'd worked on. So that was kind of a big takeaway. And another big takeaway was leadership. The director, our airport director, we were briefing some of our airline stakeholders that same day. And, before that started, he and I were having a conversation. He says, yeah, it's our turn now. I guess, we always knew this was happening. It's not a matter of if, but when. And for him to be able to repeat that based on some of the discussions we've had and exercises, I thought that, yeah, maybe we're making some headway here.
It is making headway. There's one other thing I want to bring out, because I remember back in the days of Agora, where we were, I think I was sitting next to you when they were talking about the Santa Barbara Hospital debacle, where you remember that case? And they had an open contractor with an open port, and somebody Googled their medical records, and the
I don't
insurance.
remember. I don't remember that particular case, but there's I don't doubt that was the issue there. Yeah.
Yeah, and the insurance paid up, but then they turned around and sued the company back because
Now
they
I
had
remember
been.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I knew you would
I remember that one
remember
now.
that because
Yeah.
you were reading over a contract during that meeting. And so you've made a couple of comments during your presentation that you had insurance. Insurance does not give you a blank check. You still have to demonstrate that you are worthy of having that insurance. Could you talk a little bit more about what you have to do to maintain cyber insurance that's affordable?
So I can talk to you about what I know. I frequently meet with CISOs around the area, around the state, and a lot of them can't get cybersecurity in their organizations. These are public organizations or cities or whatever that they can't even get cybersecurity insurance for one reason or another. And a lot of them that they can only get partial cybersecurity insurance. And the criteria used to be where you fill out an application, they ask you if you ever had any cyber attacks. They used to ask some very basic questions. Do you provide, awareness training, some things like that. That evolved over the years to where, how are you air gapping your backups? Well, we'll give you cybersecurity insurance if you let us do vulnerability scans on your organization or show us your vulnerability scans on your organizations. So cybersecurity uh, insurer companies have become very specific and more technical now. They really want to get in your business and know how you're managing your infrastructure from a cybersecurity perspective. And when we had our incident, actually our cybersecurity insurance was due the following month. It expired. But we worked with them, they worked with us, and we actually were able to renew our cybersecurity insurance. A large part of that is because we had a relationship with our insurer. You just don't get cybersecurity insurance and wait for something to happen. You got to make sure that you're talking to your insurer, because they have other programs and services that they do that they can offer you where you don't even have to put a claim in sometimes. So that's kind of where it's evolved. It's kind of, I thought cybersecurity insurance for organizations like ours and other government organizations were going to cease to exist because they've paid so much money out, to the Ubers and all these other big, national companies. But it seems like it's kind of coming back around now, where they're maybe considering insuring more people. But it's not an easy thing. It's not just like calling Allstate and say, hey, here's the make and model of my car, insure me, and they'll give you a price. It's like, well, should we insure you, and how can you improve it that you're worthy enough to be insured? That's how it is right now.
Thank you. Veronica, did you have a question? Couldn't tell from the chat.
Yes, I was just wondering if I'm in the AI master's program, and generally my background is in senior product management. So I was just wondering, a couple of times that conversations with me and Morgan were talking about, even though my specialty is artificial intelligence, like everybody should be concerned and learn as much as they can about cybersecurity. So I didn't know if you had anything that you'd like to share in, like, under my umbrella of specialty that maybe I can take forward with me.
Well, I think AI.
Ron, we can't hear you. Try again.
Second, something around. See myself on silence. Can you hear me?
No, super quiet.
How about now?
Oh, perfect.
Can you hear me now?
Much better. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I was just going to say that cybersecurity and AI, they really go hand in hand. AI is just running rapid right now. Lots of people are, every meetings that I have or collaborations or conferences and things like that, it's always the hot topic of discussion. But it's being integrated into all our solutions now. All of our, a lot of our, there isn't a vendor that I talk to that doesn't say, yeah, part of our solution is the AI integration and stuff like that. So our cybersecurity tools have an AI integration into them, and we as cybersecurity practitioners, we've got to make sure that we understand the AI and our applications and our systems and how they're working. Because like most organizations, well, maybe I shouldn't say like most, but like our organization at least, we've got an AI policy guidance that's out there. So we're trying to tell people, we're trying to encourage the use of AI, but we're trying to also educate people on some of the pitfalls that AI has as well. And that creates some security concerns and things like that. My biggest fear is there's people running around thinking that AI is going to solve all of their problems. And that's not necessarily the case. We got biases and things like that in AI, and we've got we really find ourselves in a in a bad situation if we deploy AI somewhere and not understanding the technology and it does some harm somewhere. How are we going to recover from that? These are types of things that we have to think from a cybersecurity perspective. And also, the threat actors are using AI as well. So I probably shouldn't say this, but they are literally always one or two steps ahead of us. So and now that they're utilizing AI, just think about the implications of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to run to what I think is my last slide. And that is, I gave this part of a briefing to our executive leadership, some trends for this year. There's already trends out there for next year, but what you got to take away in knowing that there's going to be an increase in zero-day vulnerabilities and used for extortion purposes. So that's going to be continuously on the rise, which is why you got to make sure that you're educating yourself on some of the major, especially those that are in ransomware. There's Lockbit, there's Ransom Hub, things like that. There's all these names of these ransomware families that are out there. And the scary part about it is, there's ransomware as a service out there that are associated with some of these. So anybody could pick up a ransomware service and cause some disaster somewhere if they chose to do that. So it's almost like a script kiddie if you think about it. And then the impact of AI and then Gen AI on cybersecurity. I think we talked about that a little bit, but there's going to be more coming down the pike. We're hearing some echoes of the federal government stepping in and trying to regulate some things when it comes to AI. We've had some of the big tech leaders, have concerns about AI. So we're kind of all over the place with AI right now. I'm not sure, just like we were when the internet was, coming into being, kind of wild west. But I think right now that's kind of where we are with AI if we don't get things under control. And then I really wanted to put and hammer home about the third party vulnerability piece to it, because we rely on so many different companies for, some of the services and things like that. Everything going to the cloud, SaaS services, and all those types of things. So you just can't buy a service and think that you're free from security. Just want to plug that last piece in there. And I'll just leave you with this about the cost, in 2020 cybercrime. That's why this is a big issue. I think I read a statistic a few years ago that over 90% of the money in the world was digital. So that's why you see the amount of crime and concern out there about cybersecurity. So I'll end with that. And I don't know if we have any time for any questions, but I'll take one before we leave. If not, I'll let Morgan or Asia close us out.
Seems like there is no questions. So thank you, Ron, for being with us. Yeah, we had a good time. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to also thank you for inviting me here, and I want to wish you well on your career endeavors, whatever they may be. And Morgan has my contact information, so if anybody has any additional questions or to like to discuss any pieces of this, I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you, Ron. Really appreciate it.
All
Thank
right.
you.
See you later.
Goodbye.
All right,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.